Good morning, everybody. 8:03, let's call the meeting to order. We have a quorum. I'll do the roll call in a second, but I see a hand up right to begin with. Maybe Nan, is it something that has to happen right now, or can we wait until we get to oral communication?
It's just a comment on something not on the agenda.
A comment on something not on the agenda. Let's
Yeah.
get to it when we do oral communication. Just one
Okay.
more thing. Then. Thank you. All right, so we call to order. Let's do a roll call. Dale? Lynn?
Here.
Craig?
Here.
Marianne? Chris? Here I am. Ray?
Yeah.
Jerry? Vic? Bud? Randy?
I'm on Zoom, but I'll be just in and out this morning.
In and out on Zoom. Good morning, Randy.
Good morning.
All right. So happy New Year, everybody. We've had call to order. We've had a roll call. And that brings us to item 3, oral communications. Anything not on the agenda? And I'm going to start in the room. Anybody on the committee have anything they want to add to the agenda? Okay, anybody in the audience? Nan, that would be a good time.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just am chair of the Geologic Safety Committee, and my committee has been investigating resilience of our utility infrastructure, especially seismic resilience. And we're also interested in, as you know, in safety of evacuation safety. But we'd like to invite all of your committee members to our meeting on Monday at 10 o'clock, which will be in the schoolroom where you are now or on Zoom. And we're having an invited speaker who is from PG&E. This is Jeff Bachhuber, who's the director of geosciences and manages a team in San Francisco. And he has wide experience with the performance of utilities in earthquakes. And he's especially going to talk about the experience and lessons learned from the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake with regard to PG&E's infrastructure. You know, what was the damage and what have they improved since then? And he'll talk about new technology developments for both electric power and gas lines. And that's where we're really interested, because we'd like to see the lines in Portola Valley as safe as possible in case of earthquake. So 10 o'clock on Monday, and I hope I'll see a lot of you there. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you, Nan. Thank you for the invitation. Anybody have any comment on that? All right, appreciate that. Any other oral communications? Once, going twice. That brings us to item number 4, review and approval of minutes. It was an interesting, between the holiday shutdown and our original date being a week ago, the submission happened before the minutes, and therefore they're not included in the package. So we'll include them in the next package, and we'll just approve both sets of minutes at the next meeting. All right. And that brings us to item 5, which is the majority of our meeting today. As we said, we were going to make most of the agenda today discussing priorities. We have had a subcommittee that's met multiple times. We got a briefing last time. We all got a copy of the spreadsheet, a copy of which is attached to the package. And I would suggest, Craig, you ran the subcommittee, right?
I would say Vic and I were co-chairs.
Right. Yeah, I'm happy for either of you guys to lead or
Yeah,
co-lead
so-
the discussion, kind of walk us through.
So Vic, let me give a background real quickly.
Sure.
Because that helps me understand, because I mean, you were at the beginning of it.
Sure,
And then,
I can update it from there.
yeah, and then let's go from there. By the way, if people don't have a copy of it, I do have a hard copy if you want to use that. So anybody who needs a hard copy of the stuff that was in the package, just let me know, or just grab one. So there's the extra. extra copies. So let me give you a little background, if I can, and I'm going to read from my notes because it's convoluted enough, at least for me. So the Portola Valley, the traffic evacuation capacity study that was done in October 22, that was done by Fair and Peers, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But there was section 5 of that talked about potential future and ongoing activities. And then there was a meeting apparently that was held between Jerry, Melvin, Rob, and Vic on the 9th of November, 2022, that kind of ranked the importance of these. And the metric there was H+, which is high to medium. And there are notes for 14 of those 16 items that were in the report. And that's the Fair Peers report. And then around circa 2024, we have a meeting at UPC where we agreed to review these anew. And the idea, Chris, if I recall, kind of generated from you, which was a great idea, it was just kind of a guide for what does the EPC want to do in 2025. And if I've misspoken, let me know. So the EPC formed a subcommittee, again, around November 24, and the members were Lynn, Craig, myself, Chris, Jerry, and Vic. So what we were tasked to do is review these 16 items, understand what they are, clarify them as needed, make recommended actions, determine the EPC responsibilities and potential actions, and prioritize the new list, or prioritize the list anew, and present the results to all members of the EPC. And that's where we are pretty much today. The idea of the discussion today is to adjust the prioritization as needed, finally solicit help among our EPC members to volunteer to help accomplish the tasks that we agreed to, finalize the list to present to town council for guidance / approval. And that's what we're up to today. So that's the background that I can provide.
Yeah, let me just supplement that. That's entirely accurate. I think part of our goal today, which we talked about last time, was to be prepared to submit our findings to the town council and get guidance from them as to what, given the limitations on staff and given the assignments that we make from this discussion, what's realistic over what time frame with respect to these priorities, so we can develop, if you will, a meaningful action plan in that process. The one other task that I was specifically asked to do is to check with Kim and with Chief Galacci about whether our proposed priorities were consistent with the overall goals and activities of the fire department. And I did speak to Kim in the interim to report all to you. And in fact, her email back to me was, quote, WFPD can provide support. There's nothing on this work plan that is outside our scope. And for some items listed, we can also direct you to points of contact for your further investigation. We are happy to support and fill in the gaps where needed. So there was a full embracing by the WFD of what our program was, what our goals were, how they were being defined, and obviously coordinating with them critically to get their input in going forward. So I think the task for us today is twofold. One is recognizing the limitations of our staff to look at this list and say, are there areas that either our committee, individual members want to volunteer to become involved in? That was one of the reasons we put this off, so people could look at this list and see if they were willing to, as a volunteer, to engage in some implementation here, and or take this to the town council and review with the staff what is realistic and what is not, given what the priorities are, and set up a time frame for implementation, given whatever those limitations are. So I think that's our goal today, and hopefully we'll get a consensus on the overall goals and agreements to present this to the town council at its next meeting, and also get any guidance from them as to what the next step should be. That, I think, is a summary of where we are. Obviously, there's a lot of work and thought put into this. I thank all of you for your input, and particularly my subcommittee was very conscientious in this effort. And I'd like to not kick the can any further down the road and see if we can take that next step to move this forward.
Oh, great. And I agree with almost everything said. I think I'd call them priorities instead of goals.
Yeah.
I think we'll set goals once we get a little bit of feedback from the
Fair
council.
enough.
I maybe didn't pay enough attention, but in the background, I clicked off 6 names on the subcommittee, and I know that isn't true because that would be more than quorum.
Okay.
So some of those people were probably guests, and since I attended most of those meetings, I don't remember it ever having that many people there.
Okay.
We should look at that list and maybe go back at the minutes of who was actually on it, but it shouldn't be more than 5 people.
Yeah, as my recollection is, it was Craig, Jerry, Lynn, myself, and Chris, you were also there. Those were the five people
Yeah.
that we had.
That's what I remember. Maybe I just misheard. Maybe
Yeah, I have 5 on my list.
Oh,
So
then I just miscounted.
that's okay.
It'll be the 3rd time this morning I'm going to blame something on not enough coffee.
Not that we're counting.
My apologies. Okay, so a couple added things. There was an interaction with Craig on the council. Craig was Taylor.
Taylor.
Yes, I really do need that coffee. Does anyone have extra coffee? Craig Taylor, who asked about a particular date, which I agreed to, saying I'm not sure I could be there, but my vice chair could, and we never heard back if it's been confirmed or not, but there's good likelihood that we're on an agenda.
This is for the
late-
town council.
for the town council later in January. And I don't recall how many people said they could or couldn't come, but just for the record, right, we don't have any council liaison or council members here today, and the Woodside Fire Department, I believe, is off at a different meeting that they can't attend today. So we don't have our usual support here, and we can't get guidance from town council members today, but we'll do our thing independently and get the outlines of a presentation together. I would hope at the end of this, we'll have an agreed list of priorities, and we'll assign a subcommittee to create a short presentation to the council and give it later this month. That's my hope for an outcome. Any other questions or inputs? Anybody here or? Yeah.
I presume that this list is activities only that can be undertaken by this committee. Is that correct?
That's why I'm calling it priorities instead of goals. I mean, it's kind of a mixture, right? Of things we'd love to see and things that we think can
Because I
get
will
done.
tell you, if it's not, if it's goals for the town, I spoke up at the town council meeting last night. And I said, number 1 should be for this town to drop everything else and figure out how to get an additional lane on Alpine Road so we can exit in an evacuation. This other stuff doesn't really matter if we can't get out of town. And in the Fair and Peers report, they were very clear that the only thing that could significantly improve evacuation times that was reasonably feasible, other than have everybody move out of town, was to add an additional lane on Alpine Road.
So,
And so that's my question.
Yeah.
If this is an overall priority, that's number 1. If this is just a list of things we can do, then that's a different.
right.
Well,
So-
the guidance was to include in our rankings the realistic feasibility of getting it done in the absence of town staff availability and town budget. So we may very well in our report, for example, say we think the number 1 thing, if that's what we agree on, is we've got to address additional outflow on Alpine Road. But that's out of our scope. I mean, we're just letting you know that's what we think is most important inside what we think we can do. These are the lists of things. That would be my recommendation.
Right. So the answer is, it's not the most important. It is definitely a high priority on this list.
But it's not even on the list.
Huh?
It's not even on the list.
Well,
I just went through it right now. I don't see it.
right. Let's just.
It's really not H, it's not H plus.
Yeah, let me just, well, anyway, I'll look for that and identify that on there, but certainly from our discussions, it was recognized in terms of the evacuation side of it. But the point that I wanted to make here is that The key of all of this is to, and we've set high, medium, and low priorities, is obviously to get the town council moving forward with whatever is in the capabilities of our staff to implement these recommendations, or get guidance from them as to where they want to go from here. So I think that the purpose, I hope, is not to revisit each one of these recommendations, but rather to allow us to move it forward to the next stage. So I will look more carefully, but I know we discussed this. It was the number one.
Yeah, if you referred to the first one, it does say establish evacuation responsibilities. I think we could amend that slightly to say, look, okay, so I think we could amend those slightly to include the concern about evacuation and the widening of Alpine. So, remember that this is a set of, this list comes from, the report. And that doesn't mean that we can't change things in it. But I'm kind of with Vic that we could move some things forward. So I see that it's kind of, it can be used to encapsulate things that are first and foremost on our minds as well. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay.
I mean, for me, it's very simple. If this, I will tell you quite honestly.
Sure.
Having spent 3 of my years of my life on this crazy evacuation stuff, that your first item means nothing to me. It just means nothing. Matter of fact, number 2 is concrete. Number 3, if number 3 is just, okay, there are some concrete things the town council needs to decide about our EOC and EOP, that's concrete. So I look for concrete things. This, wonderful, do this and all feel good and hold hands and kumbaya means nothing to me.
Yeah, well, all right, I respectfully disagree, Dale, and I think you're minimizing unfairly, inaccurately, more than unfairly. I think you're trying to be very fair, but inaccurately. I think there are a number of.
But then tell me what the specifics
Well,
are.
I
on the
will, and if we need to go into detail and we want to use our time today to discuss these item by item, we're happy to do that because obviously we want to have this discussion among all of us.
Yeah, but if you go to town council,
But
Vic,
let me
with
just,
this
may I
item
finish?
1,
May
this
I
means
finish?
nothing.
I'll let you finish.
Sure.
May I finish? With respect, for example, to the item, the third, I think you referred to, I think for the management of daytime employee evacuation, is that the one you didn't understand what that meant?
No, it's number 1.
Number one,
Recommend this responsibility. What responsibilities are not laid out specifically in the evacuation plan?
well, the question is, in the evacuation plan is recommending who is responsible for implementing those aspects of the plan.
It's pretty clear. Have you read the evacuation plan?
I have read it. It's been some time since I've read it, Dale.
This was just.
And as I
presented by-
recall, when we did have a town manager that was involved in some of the discussions, there was a good deal of ambiguity about who was handling what, and particularly with respect to the center, the operations center, and how all that was going to
That's
be done.
not listed very much in the evacuation plan that was presented.
Well, that's
by the
part,
fire
I
marshal.
think, of the operational challenge that we have. And that concerned our group was how actually it's going to operate in terms of who has what responsibility. Again, I don't know if we want to go into the detail of that now, but the fact of the matter was that there was sufficient ambiguity that we wanted further clarification. And that's why we put this as an item of considerable importance. As to some of these other areas, for example, daytime employee evacuation, real concerns about guiding, but many other contractors that are here who have not been brought into this process and getting their commitment to understand how we're going to handle an evacuation and so forth. So each of these items we felt were important to get some guidance from town council on whether they saw these as sufficient priority that they want us to go forward and work with what limited capabilities we have in our town staff right now and set particular deadlines to implement these. So I respectfully disagree. I do think a good deal of work has gone in clearly a great deal of work started before we played this role. That was the major effort that was made. And this is an attempt to try and move it to that next stage.
I'd like to come into the discussion if I can. I really think that you need something quite specific in number one. Again, I support what Dale is saying. I think we ought to be saying, if we really think Alpine Road should have a widening, that should be an item rather than the words you have here. Or add a different item that has higher priority, that's number one. Evacuation plans don't work unless you actually do something. And just approving the plan doesn't mean anything either. You have to actually have something you want to focus upon, and that's something focusing upon. That's my point too.
Yeah, my opinion right now, having dealt with this council and so on, unless you bring something very specific to them, let's say, oh, fine, and we'll get nothing. So you've got to say, okay, in the evacuation plan that you accepted in, I think it was August or September of last year, that primarily was written by the fire marshal, by the way, there is this open item. You, the town council, need to make a decision on this item. And say, what do you want to do? If you take it to them, then they can make a decision on that item. If you hand them this sentence, this means nothing. And oh, by the way, they'll hand it off to someone on staff who this is going to become item 995 on their to-do list, even if they say it's number one.
If I could maybe ask a clarifying question. I didn't have the impression that we were thinking of handing the council tasks for the council. This is meeting number one of the year, and this was in preparation for the 2025 potential agenda items for the Emergency Preparedness Committee. What we want, so we don't have conclusions that we're asking them to support. We have areas that we want to work on, and we want to make sure that those areas are in line with what they think are important. That's pretty much how I looked at this list. If that's different from the rest of the team, then we should maybe rethink how.
I think that's entirely consistent with what our subcommittee did. That's exactly accurately stated. And what I think what we're looking for is to get, if you will, an imprimatur from the town council to what that effort was and direction from them as to what they want us to do as the next step. Which clearly, Dale, I agree with you and your comment as well, that the specifics of that I think have to be really pulled out. And I think where we disagree to some element is whether we need to provide the specifics to the town council, what we're asking them in greater detail than the broad, if you will, responsibilities and recommendations that are listed here.
Can't we do both?
Well,
Can't we add in a specific that we'd like to see happen rather than the generalities that we're saying right now?
Yeah, I think if you want, if this committee's desire is for our subcommittee to come up with specifics under these categories before we present this to the town council.
Not under these categories, a separate category.
Not separate.
I'm sorry, that's my position.
Well, our committee came up with these. These are based on the 14 recommendations that have been made. I'm not looking to expand beyond those. That was not our goal. Our goal was to work with those recommendations that were made in the original report and then to come up with, if you will, recommendations as to how those responsibilities and those efforts will be carried out.
I want to make one comment before you, Jerry. I'm not sure I agree with that, Vic. That report was very evacuation specific. We're talking EPC more broadly. Right? I think if there are things that we think are important that weren't recommended in the evacuation report, we should certainly consider them as goals for the year. You comment on that, or you?
I'm open to that. I thought the parameters were dealing with those 14 recommendations. That didn't limit us, but if there are more expanded areas that we need to cover, I'm certainly open to the subcommittee going back and doing some more work on that if that's what this committee would like to do.
Does the subcommittee have to do it, or can the council here, can we do it here today?
So we can, that was the idea, was that we bring the subcommittee's work to the overall committee and we would agree, debate. I have no problem with what we're doing right now. I think it's exactly right.
Nor do I.
Going
And
into the
if we wanna
details, if that's
spend
what it
time
takes,
today-
that's fine. If it takes another meeting, we can call a special meeting. That's fine. Let's get it right. Jerry, you were gonna make a comment.
I was just going to say that if there is strong feeling about a specific request to the council about Alpine Road, we can agendize that. We can have a discussion about that, and we can present that as a separate recommendation to the council. These, however, are related more to how we want to interact with the council regarding a whole host of things that we need. Our mission is to advise the council on how to improve the emergency preparedness of the town. And Alpine Road is certainly absolutely a critical item, but there are other items. And this was intended to sort of give a way for us to put the feet to the fire of the council on those various items. We can't do almost any of these. These are things that they have to do. So we want to measure, we want to encourage, we want to support, we want to get it on their calendar. But the real critical issue is it's what we can do. I'm totally support Dale's or anybody else's interest in having a separate discussion and recommendation of the council about Alpine Road. That's an issue we want to do.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with it being either separate or incorporated into this. Looks like Randy has got his hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I think building the consensus for the EPC to identify evacuation problems and risks as the #1 priority could be effective in having an impact with the town council and the town population. So I largely agree with Dale that I think focus is important. And while I'm not sure if I'm not sure about widening Alpine Road, that may be by far the biggest contributor, but it's also a longer time frame and considerable cost and other agencies and stuff. So I think focusing in on evacuation problems and risk is I think maybe a framing that can pull this together. I mean, especially as what we're seeing happening in LA. And as the other member of the evacuation subcommittee, I think I don't think there's been adequate attention on that from the town council. And I think if we can rally around that, I think that would be the biggest thing. And if overall for emergency preparedness, if other committee members think that there are bigger risks and bigger or other aspects of work and analysis that could be done, I think we should bring that up. But from from my 2 years of experience on the committee and what I see in terms of where the holes are and where the risk is, I think evacuation risk in a fast moving wildfire is by far our biggest risk. And I think the lack of significant tangible progress on that in the last 2 years that I've been a part of this is disappointing. And I think if we rally together, I think we might have a chance of moving the council and also taking their concerns to the public, because I think this is becoming very visible what the risk is and what the risk of continued complacency is.
So if I may, I would suggest, in light of this, that clearly some discomfort about embracing this as a whole now. And we have two options. One is we can discuss these particularly now, which I don't think is a suitable time frame to go over these and really explore this fully. Or we can set up a separate meeting which is in part what I hope we accomplished today, but I think the committee clearly expresses some discomfort in that. A separate meeting for that very purpose, where people can look at these, come up with additional areas they have. Our subcommittee spent many hours already putting thought into this, and I'm not inclined, frankly, to spend any more subcommittee time on this. But I am very receptive and interested in other committee members' input into this and the particulars that they feel that should be here. So we either can do that now, or we can set up a separate time to meet with that agenda and be prepared to discuss it before we attempt to present this to town council. And that would be my suggestion in order to satisfy the concerns that have been expressed.
Well, I agree with you. It sounds like there's enough question ideas in the air that it's going to require a little bit more time. That was the intention for today's meeting. There's nothing else
was.
on the agenda. And in fact, there's no town report, there's no fire. We can even take extra time from the agenda because there's nobody here. So I would suggest we respect the 9 o'clock cutoff for people, but let's spend the rest of the time debating it and then probably also follow it up with a special meeting. Let's agree to how does that sound to people?
That sounds fine. I mean, I'm sitting here and again, if we go back to the beginning of the discussion, if this is what we want as a template for what the objectives are of this committee for the coming year.
Yep.
And we want to get buy-in by the town council, that's fine. I still believe that we need something more concrete, like under the third one on the list, which is improve and coordinate communications and active protocols. This number 2, to me, is very concrete. We have an inactive, EOC, EOP. We couldn't open our EOC if we had to today. Yeah, only 2 of us know where the key is.
If you're
Only-
counting me, then it might be 3.
Oh, 3, maybe 3. Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. This time I got it right though.
And the EOP that the town has is sadly out of date. And some of us here have received EOC training, but that's, I don't know, 10 years old, a long time ago. There's nobody left on town staff that has any EOC training. So for me, that's a very concrete item. And it also requires the town council to make a significant decision. Whether they will make that decision or not, I don't know. I don't have a problem with us taking on the responsibility to rewrite the EOP and how the EOC operates, but we need from the town council to decide, do they want it staffed by town staff or by volunteers?
Well, even before that, is that something they want to tackle?
That's true. I mean,
I mean-
Craig Taylor brought it up once before and he's on the town council. Do we really need an EOC at the town since,
Right.
we've somewhat taken over? That's a discussion for them to have. Because I don't want this committee to take on the responsibility of rewriting an EOP if the town council decides we really don't need an EOC.
And that's been one of my reasons for wanting to do it this way is I've seen what happens when we go off and do something that they basically aren't interested in us doing. They don't spend time on it, and that's okay. I mean, we work for them.
So,
So
but
Here are suggestions. I mean, the concept here, these are suggestions that we think are important. Do you agree? Do you have other input? Which would you like us to work on?
yeah, see, so to me, this is concrete and it's also important. So for me, I think that is a great thing and we can take to town council. And if they disagree or if they say, well, it's going to take us 6 months to decide what we want to do with this item, then good. We aren't going to be wasting our time doing anything.
No, I'm worried that we're gonna keep talking about this instead of actually doing it. It takes a long time to go through this and decide whether we all agree.
Right.
So if we don't sort of discipline ourselves and push through, I mean, each of us have some opinion. And if there's things that need to be changed, this is the time for us to do it. We might get through 5 of them today, and that's fine. Then the next meeting, we'll do another 5 or 8 or whatever, so that we can get through. Otherwise, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, and I would just add, there are certain items in here, just by way of example, that it's just a very clear issue that requires to be addressed as a high priority. I use by way of example, the shelter in place. I just think that's an area that has been a great deal of concern about identifying these areas and getting the community educated about these areas. That we're really ready to try and go to those next steps and try and coordinate and do these things once we identify who is to do it over what time frame.
Well,
I
let me
think,
back up.
I'm not finished. I do think there are areas that you have pointed out that certainly we can have greater specificity. And I encourage us to discuss it today or at a special meeting to get everybody to feel comfortable with that. But I do feel there's some really good substantive steps in here that have been identified, and we should just go to that next step and put the meat on the bones if we need to do it either now or at a separate meeting.
Well, regarding the shelter in place, that's not our responsibility. That is our wonderful fire marshal here. They have to identify those for us. We do not have the expertise to identify the,
Dale, if you look at what's here, what we say our role is as follows. Coordinate with the WFD, with the fire department by advocating to compile a list of the SIP locations and important specifics, work with them, and to present it to the EPC. In other words, we recognize that this isn't meant to be a complete description of it, but clearly that's what's anticipated, is that we're putting this down as a H+, as a high priority because of the community concern. And I think we're starting to parse this in a way that really is inappropriate and is going to frustrate us from getting some of these things done.
Vivek, if that's your opinion, you can take this list to the town council. Be my guest.
So a couple things. First of all, let's let the record show fire marshal is here, so we should be respectful and allow the time for the report. Thank you for making it. Number 2, maybe on this list, there seem to be ideas in the room. That was the point of bringing the subcommittee work to the full council, that there are some things that should be on the list that haven't made it in. Maybe we can go around and see if we can capture a specific few items that we want to add to this list and then agree to a time for a special meeting where we work through exactly what you say. You know, the goal of that meeting is we're going to finish and come out with an agreed upon list, but trying to vote on it now seems to me people will feel left out and we're not going to have a agreed upon cohesive backing from this committee.
By the way, I just want, for Kim's benefit, I just want to point out that I before you came here, I mentioned that you and I had the opportunity to talk, that obviously WFPD can provide support to it, and you felt there was nothing outside the scope of your overall efforts that would prevent us from moving forward to the next stage in this, but just so that you have that by way of background. And yes, I'm sorry. Yes, because I think that's fine.
All right. So I'll start and say this is something I'd like to see. I think it's in here because I was on the subcommittee and it just maybe got a little more buried in terms of, I agree with Dale's priority on how the EOC works. I'd like to include in that item how it integrates with CERT, because I think we have a different kind of CERT than we've had before when we've done an emergency operations plan for the town. I just like that to be considered. We can vote it up or down if it becomes priorities in the top 3, but I'd like to make sure that's on the list. Aside from that, I think everybody should get a chance to make a point. Should we just go down the line or do people want to?
I have one small point.
Yes, sir.
Going again to the second one here about the shelter in place. The last point here is to present to the EPC. I would think we presenting this to town council. We're preparing it and we're presenting it to ourselves. Come on, guys. We presented it to the town council. That's our,
Well, again, these are goals, priorities for our committee for the year, right? So let's find out, I think the intention there was, but Craig or Rick, the intention I think was gather the information, let's make us aware of it and then clearly move it along.
Yeah, that was the intention. If you look at the title of the column, EPC responsibilities, what can we do? And let me just, I've been listening to this quite a bit and I think it's a great discussion. I think that we can do both. We can capture the concerns of the EPC, and that's what this list was intended to do. Right. Now recall that the list dates back to September of 2022. So the list itself is kind of incomplete, if you will, or dated, but it's a starting point. And again, I think what's going on today is exactly kind of what we expected, and that's to have a good discussion about this list. I think we can clearly include the concepts that Dale is talking about, which is what are the concrete things that we can propose to town council if I'm capturing your concern correctly, or at least one of the concerns. I think this list can be used. It's a good starting point. It's not perfect, and that's what we're meeting about.
Agree.
I would just add that the way I looked at this is that we identified a number of things that we don't think action is being done anywhere that we can see. And that the responsibility of the EPC was to light a fire on something to get it done. Not that we would do it, but that we would make sure it happened, like the shelter in place. There is no list of shelter in place items for people in Portola Valley. So if we encourage the Woodside Fire Protection District to create that list, and they told us about it, it would automatically go to the council and to the town. So we're just saying we want to light a fire under people to get things done.
Then I misunderstood. I thought we were trying to compile a list of our goals for the committee. Because if all you're doing is lighting a fire, then I'll go back to number one being tell the town council to get off their horse and start the ball rolling on widening Alpine Road. If we're going to talk about, here's the things that we as a committee have as goals, and we want to make sure we are aligned with the town council, and we need some specific guidance on bits for those goals, that's a different list. So you tell me what we're trying to do here.
My opinion is that we are trying to set responsibilities for the committee to encourage and present to the council what they need to get done. So in item 1, it talks about establishing a timeline. So right now, there's not a timeline for accomplishing all the things that are in the evacuation plan. So if we,
The evacuation plan is written, there's nothing. you're
but there's not a timeline for them to accomplish what needs to be done, like Alpine Road.
You're talking about the recommendations that came out of the evacuation study in 2022. Let's please not confuse
Yeah.
the two. We have this Fair and Peer study. We have the evacuation plan that our fire marshal sent to the town council. Those are two separate things.
Okay, I think in the interest of time, let's make sure everyone gets a minute or two, any concerns they want to see that go back into this list, then let's pick a date and let's make sure we leave some time for Fire Marshal who made the time to come here today to give a report. So, go ahead, Ray.
Just one quick add. I mean, there's nothing specifically here about what the communication protocol is. And we've got the facilities, you mentioned CERT, all that. There's just nothing here about any recommendation to town about how we're going to communicate. We should at least have
First
something.
item, the one that I mentioned, you captured,
I'm
are you
following.
capturing these? Thank you. And then communication,
Yeah, communication protocol. Who says what to who?
Okay.
when and how.
Good. Who else has anything they want to make sure gets on this list for?
Can I add a sub-paragraph under raise? Is, you know, we spent some time last year, actually, we wrote the protocols for the AM radio. I'm not sure there's anybody in the town staff or town council who is aware of those protocols. Yeah, we wrote those and
Yeah.
approved them
Oh,
last
good.
year.
So that should be on the list and that's,
Yeah. That's important. That, you know, if we bring that to the town's council, they need to be aware.
It includes the SMC alert and all that. I mean, it's a protocol, right? Yeah.
Yeah, my question is, I hear you and agree with all the points that you're making. I don't know if it's just a question of wording or there's something that's missed, but what it says with respect to communications, work with the town council to clearly define what the EPC responsibilities and actions are. Recommend and encourage the town council and town management to draft procedures for and how to open the EOC. I mean, it's fairly
okay.
specific.
Well,
No,
then,
that doesn't talk about what to say, who says it, and when and how.
That's correct.
That does not say that.
That it doesn't go to that next level. That's correct. And the question is that what we want to do here? Or who is responsible for seeing that that's to get done, to take it to that level?
well, my suggestion is we have a list. There seem to be some things people think are missing. For our next meeting, we can either say we've added this, or we believe it's incorporated into item number 3, or here's a proposed rewording for number 3 that includes the comments from this member of the committee, this member of the committee, whatever.
So do I hear a communication protocol being specifically suggested to be added to that? So I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yes,
AM radio.
specifically including AM radio.
Comment about what you think should be in that. I could think. Oh, no, Craig.
This Craig.
Yeah.
This Craig.
This Craig.
The real Craig.
Okay, All right.
The
Yep.
present Craig.
right. Are there any others that we want to make sure are in here for our next meeting when we go through and actually come up with a prioritized list?
Well, just a comment of clarification. Are we talking about doing a special meeting? Because I think there's a lot of activity that can go on that I don't know that we would want to, you know, while the ball is rolling, you know, get this stuff done. I don't.
My
that's not very
intention, I
clear.
thought I said that earlier, but maybe I
Okay.
didn't say it clearly enough. My intention is when we're done getting the comments, let's pick a date for a special meeting.
Okay.
We'll come back
All right,
together and work
thank
on
you.
it.
I hope mine have been captured, depending on what we intend to do. Widening of Alpine Road is either number 1 or not on this list. And the other one that I think is concrete is ask the town council for guidance on the EOC and EOP and how they wish to have that or not have that coordinated with CERTS and Woodside Fire. But that's above our pay grade to decide. Once they make that decision,
We can help implement, et
we
cetera.
can
Yeah,
implement.
okay. And I agree. That would capture mine as well. The way you said it captures mine.
And I had a third one and it just, number 3, which is not on this list, but has vanished into the ether is the safety element, which we started on 2 or 3 years ago. The town council has now punted, and somewhere along the line, the safety element needs to be done. I don't know whether this committee wants to push the town council on that or not.
I'm not sure it's a worthwhile thing. I mean, I had multiple discussions with our town manager last year about it. He simply said, I don't have the staff. It won't become a priority until X, Y, Z. And now there's a new regime. So I think we could ask, but I think we would work on it when they ask us to, basically. Say we think it's important. We could make that part of our presentation if that's the goal. We can make that an item for discussion at the next meeting if you want.
To me, a lot of the things that would guide us for the future.
Yeah.
Would come out of the safety element. But, you know, this committee doesn't want to push, I mean, the town council, to be quite honest, has more on its plate than they can resolve, I think, in the next 12 months,
Agreed.
to be real honest.
All right. Any other points we want to make sure are on the list for next time, or any wording changes? Excellent. I will propose a date for a special meeting and say Thursday, 2 weeks from today, same time. I made that up, I mean, with my own calendar.
Yes,
but
what date is that? Before we all get into it.
The 23rd.
I'm not.
You're not here. You're not here. Next Thursday. I can do it.
You can't do next week.
I'm not. But if that doesn't, maybe I can move something.
Next week is 16.
Stand by.
Following week is the 23rd. The last is the 30th.
I am in town for January, so
I could make next Thursday work.
Which one?
1 week from today, same time. Okay, I will work that, and I'll work that as soon as this meeting's over. Okay. I think we close out that. We come back 1 week from today. The intent is to come out of that with agreed upon, everybody's voice has been heard in terms of what goes into the list. We'll have a process, something will
And
come
is
out.
that the 16th? Do I might get my
Yes,
right
that's next
date
week.
here?
Thursday the 9 + 7 would be Thursday the 16th, yes.
Just an administrative thing, just send your comments to me and I'll try and incorporate everything into this kind of database.
And I probably need a package to send out pretty darn soon in order to qualify for a meeting next Thursday. I'll find that out today as well. The special meeting doesn't have to have the minutes from today, and the special meeting has to have what we will discuss, which will be the revised. If you could add those words, I'll find out how quickly we need it to, A,
Okay.
is it available? B, when do we need to submit a package? Right, because it's got to be publicly disclosed before we can discuss
Okay,
it.
very good.
And I would just ask that we do our homework before that meeting,
Yep.
that everybody really give some focused thought as to those items that they feel should be added and more fully discussed or deleted, so that hopefully with that thought in advance, we can really focus in on and make the decisions at the next meeting.
I agree, but reminder, the conversation can't happen between all of us by email before that. You can centralize things. You can send them into Craig to make sure that this is on that list, but the actual debate. and
Yeah.
the Work has to happen in the meeting.
But I really want to encourage that if there's a particular item, let's send them on to Craig so that we can get them identified and ready to discuss before the next meeting.
Excellent. I agree. Okay, let's close that out and let's give Kim some time to give a report. Happy New Year. Thank you for attending and all your hard work as always.
Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year to you all. Hopefully you were able to get a little bit of a break during the holidays. First, I wanted to start with apologize for being late today. Just had some other things that took a little more precedence, but happy to be here. I wanted to start with, before I give a report, just from listening to everything that's going on, is I think the list that was put together, I haven't compared it exactly to the complete evacuation plan, but in overview of looking at it, it pretty much does hit most of the highlights that on a higher level is just, there's so many layers that you can go on and on, but I think it just gives a good description of, hey, this is the topic, even though there's a lot of things that fall under this topic that we need to go through. And I think if I may make a recommendation, I think you're all on the right track. Everybody collectively has different ideas of approach and how to accomplish this. And as an advisory board to the council, I think one of the biggest challenges are, one, there not being a town manager appointed yet, who by appointment is the emergency manager of the town, you don't really, you're not able to sit with them and say, okay, here's the recommendations we're making and who and what for all these different things in the evacuation plan for our roles and responsibilities that the town is supposed to be taking on. But I also think what can be done, because I do agree with doing work, as you've seen in the past, you put a lot of work and then you feel like it's useless because it's not even considered or taken in. So it feels like it was a waste of time on your part. I think one way and maybe one approach you could do is, whether it's right or wrong, break everything down, what the roles and responsibilities are for each of those topics, make the recommendation, because sometimes, even though you're not in the position to make the decision, whether it's right or wrong, it forces people who can make the decision actually make a decision, because you're saying, hey, this is what we say you should be doing. And then it makes them think, yes, we agree, or no, we should do this. But sometimes just that very thought gets people who are in a decision-making position to just say, that's a good idea. I'm just going to take that decision. Especially when the town manager finally does get appointed, they're going to have so much that all the work that you guys are doing, they may very well just say, you guys have done a lot of work. I appreciate your advisement. And, they will probably, a good town manager will take it under advisement, look it over and say, this is good. Let's go with this. Because the other reminder to have is, you can always change things, but at least having something and being able to go forward with a plan and actually do it, when you're doing it, you'll finally realize, oh, this doesn't work. We have to make some modifications and changes. And I think that's why sometimes people are afraid to actually commit and have a plan in place, is because there's so many variables. They want to have all the right answers right off the bat. And it just doesn't work that way. You have to have a plan and test it out and see how it goes. And if something doesn't work, you change those moving parts, because this is a very variable document. And there's a lot that goes into emergency preparedness. I have sat and listened to both committees here and Woodside, and listening to the thoughts and the work that wants to be done. There's a lot of talking a lot of the times, but we're afraid to pull these triggers because of maybe people won't agree, maybe the town won't support it. Well, we have to not be afraid of that and move forward. And with that, I wanted to say that yesterday was Woodside's Emergency Preparedness Committee meeting, and it was great to hear from them. They gave this committee kudos. There are a couple of residents, which just goes to show that residents in other areas are paying attention to what this committee does, because they recommended to that committee to subscribe to the minutes from this committee, because you'll learn a lot, that there's a lot of work and time that's going into what you guys are doing to push things forward. And Woodside is using it as an example of, hey, we need to also get moving just like they are. So I just wanted to relay that to you, because I want you to all realize the value of residents and people out there that are taking this committee for the work that you do. And even though you may not feel sometimes like you're making progress and beating a dead horse, you are making progress and people are noticing. So I wanted to make that point. I do agree with the safety element. That's a big thing. And the fire department, we have already comments and a lot of work that needs to be done with the town on the safety element. We haven't been able to move forward with it for two reasons. One, because there is no town manager for us to move forward with it. We need to work with the town manager and the planning director. And then the second reason was because of the hazard maps haven't come out. Because a lot of it, as far as applying fire safe regulations and what's going to be applied, does have to do with the maps in that sense. And so the SRA maps are out. We actually, the furthest that we've made it, and I think I may have said at the last meeting, that we actually got a letter finally from the state saying that the maps are going to be out this month sometime. I'm guessing this month, next month, even though they said that, we still have to take that with a grain of salt and think there might be a little bit more. But the letter did say that it was coming, and it also gave every jurisdiction, every fire marshal a toolkit with how it's going to be adopted in the whole process and what we do with that information. So that's good news. So we will be getting those LRA maps here in the very near future. I wanted to update you. So the fire chief is actually at a workshop. The fire chiefs of San Mateo County along with the deputy fire chiefs are in Monterey for a conference where they're discussing everything for the year, strategic plans, responses, all that kind of stuff. So that's why he's not here today and Selena is out sick. But I wanted to relay that our strike team did deploy Tuesday night for the Palisades fire. And it was made up of, we had an engine from Woodside, a crew from Menlo, a crew from Redwood, a crew from San Bruno, Central County Fire. So as a county with all the engines, we created that strike team and they went out late Tuesday night. With the Palisades fire, I know that's a big topic on everyone's minds. A lot of residents, there's a lot of fear and of the unknown. And it's really sad. And I feel that it's something that we've been trying, this committee, Wildfire Preparedness Committee, the fire department, we have done nothing but try to keep arming residents with what they need to do. The wake up call of there is work to be done in this district. You do need to prepare all the recommendations, everything that is said over and over. And I don't know what it takes to get people motivated to realize that you don't want it to happen here. And it very well can, because it doesn't matter what time of the year it is. We obviously see we're not in the hot June, July, and August months. This is happening in January, and it's devastating for people. And unfortunately, we have to use these incidences as an opportunity to take advantage and remind people when Woodside Fire adopted this ordinance for fuel mitigation, it wasn't to punish people, but it was a way to get people to tell them you have a responsibility. And if you're not going to do it, we're going to have to make you do it, because it's not for us. It's for you and for your community. It's to help your community survive a wildfire. We don't know how much of it you're going to survive, but you're trying to take your best chances to survive. And with that, complying with the ordinance helps you establish that defensible space, which is part of the important part of operations during a wildland fire, is opening up the canopies, opening up areas so that there's, I'm not saying clear cutting everything. I'm just saying that we need some gaps to be able to drop extinguishing product. Firefighters can stand and contain, because let's make no mistake, during a wildland fire, firefighters put water, but they're not putting out the fire. They're containing the fire. They're trying to keep it from getting bigger. And it's those defensible spaces and those breaks that create that line to try to contain the fire to something where they can control. So I want to put out more information. We're still doing our home assessments. It's been very, very challenging, I have to say. I honestly thought that people would want to meet with the inspector and take the time to do the defensible space inspections for their homes and learn about what they need to do and get educated about why they're doing things, because our inspectors take 30, 45, an hour. I've had inspectors come back an hour and 20 minutes from one inspection because they took so much time with the property owner to educate them and tell them all the things they can do, not just to be in compliance, but even more than that, going the extra mile, just so people are aware. We have left 160 door hangers. So we started in Woodside. We have left 160 door hangers so far. And out of all those door hangers, because it's people that weren't home when we went to do the assessment, 5 people have called back to schedule their inspection. So it's been about almost 4 to 6 months since those door hangers have been left. I am this week sending out a letter to them, and now we're going down a different path with residents. They have 10 days to contact us to schedule their inspection. Otherwise, they will be found as being non-compliant, and then we're going to go down enforcement paths. So that is where we're going with that. Now, with the other people who have had their home assessments, we are sending them courtesy letters to remind them we are 6 months in. The ordinance requires compliance in 12 months. So keep doing your work, keep moving forward, keep doing what you need to do so that when we do come around in July of this year to do the re-inspections, you are in compliance. Now, we do make modifications for those that we know if they have a ton of things to do, which we haven't had so far, all the properties we've done, people have not been like this significant, like, oh my gosh, I have $100,000 worth of work to do. No one's really hit that. It's been a lot of, mainly a lot of simple things. There haven't been really huge ticket items. There are some properties that have, they have a couple of dead trees within 100 feet of their house that have been, those have been people with the larger ticket items. But thankfully in Woodside, they have a matching fund program that kind of helps assist and they get some funding back for what they spent. But that's a courtesy letter that's going out to them. We will not be starting Portola Valley until we finish the 4 zones that we committed to finish last year. But because of the challenges we've hit, I'm not going to have the inspectors start, which this year would have been, 1, 5, 6, 7, 8. This year would have been 9, 10, 11, 12, zones 9 through 12, which is on the outer end of Portola Valley, is what we wanted to start this year. Hopefully we'll be starting that end maybe in July-ish, but it all depends on how we get through these first 4 zones. I'm hoping over time as these become a consistent every year and we get everybody done their first go around, that it's going to become something that's routine and a little easier. So that's the update with the home assessments. I also want to take advantage of these home assessments. I'm trying to use them as an avenue to communicate to homeowners, not just about the defensible space, but also on evacuation and also on fire safety. Town of Woodside, we've partnered with Dick Brown, who is a town council member. Woodside Fire has partnered on starting a program for older adults on fire safety and fall prevention. We'd be happy to do that for Portola Valley as well. But what we're doing with that is because there have been, what motivated him was the history of people that live by themselves, have fallen, and nobody discovers them till days later. And we don't want that to happen to, 2 people is too many. So that's what kind of brought out these programs. But we know communicating with residents is really hard. It doesn't matter if we send them a letter. It doesn't matter if we put it on their door. It doesn't matter if we email them. Either people don't want to know, or people don't care to know, or people just don't do anything. I'm not sure which one it is, but we've tried every communication avenue and we get people that say, oh, well, I didn't know. So I am out of options short of, because we're hitting every single house for home assessments, I'm utilizing that of now you're going to know because we are looking at you face to face, and we're using that as plugs of communication on emergency evacuation preparedness. What I would like to do, and maybe this committee can help, is I'd like to create either a postcard size or brochure size that has a QR code, gives them brief information on preparedness and evacuation, what's been created, that these things exist out here, that this committee has done a lot. We have a lot of information on our website, but just something that it gives people a quick information. Here you go. So when we do these home assessments, it's just an avenue we can use to communicate to them. Basically, I feel like we're advertising how to be safe, but it's funny that you have to advertise that. You would think most people would want to do that, but so that is the other thing I wanted to do with communication avenues. That's been hard. We have launched for 2025 a subscribe to our website. So please go to our website. There's a banner at the top that takes you directly to a link to subscribe. When you subscribe, you have options what you want to subscribe to. Some things could be our meeting, our board agendas, our any news, press releases, notifications. Things are important that we want to blast out to community members. So please register. We are also launching for 2025 a district-wide newsletter where we're going to include all information going on that's hot topics in all the divisions so that residents know what's going on in our training division, our EMS division, how our paramedics and all the constant training that's going on, out of prevention, including public education. So we're going to be doing that quarterly. That encompasses all this information because we want residents to know everything that the fire department's doing. And then the last thing I have is, do you want me to attend next week's special meeting?
We would welcome your attendance then. That would be great.
Okay, wonderful. Any questions for me?
Oh, was a lot of information. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And
Okay, I
one-
find myself having to leave, so I'm going to hand the key to somebody else.
So we can, I mean, I really have to leave. You can walk up everything. You walked up. One question, they did appoint an interim town manager last night. Interim, yes. He's a retired guy, so he can only work a certain number of hours. He's got a contract through the end of this year or until they hire a full-time town manager.
Is he a local person who lives in town or what?
No. He's lived all over. He's been a this town manager, assistant town manager
good.
for several towns. No, if you go to last night's town council agenda, his resume is there.
We have a new, I just want to say we have a new Firewise community. We have a new approved Firewise community. It's 400 households. It's called Old La Honda,
Yeah.
but it includes Wyndham Drive.
Yay, good
Great.
job. Okay,
Are we adjourning?
yes, he's the vice chair. You can call the adjournment.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
So our next meeting is the 16th at 8 AM, right? Yep. Okay. Yeah, but hopefully it's here. Okay. No, we can do a debrief. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do just a phone call or something like that. That's something we want to talk about right now. I'll give you a buzz. Are you around later today?
Yes.
Okay, Craig, give me your number.